Everyone. Well, I am Dave Warnock here from Charlotte, North Carolina, U.S. Was supposed to be in Munich with you guys this month, and as we know, that got shut down, as did everything else we were doing. But I'm glad to be with you via Zoom, the miracles of technology that we have now. And I hope to, and sometime in the future, if things work out, I hope to be able to reschedule everything and possibly be there in person with you and meet you. That would be lovely. So let's hope for that possibly next year. If I'm still going, which I think I will be, I'll tell you a little bit of my story and then what I'm doing in the Dying Out Loud thing and why I was even scheduled to come speak to you guys. I was an evangelical charismatic Christian for about 3.5 decades, about 35 years. I came to the Lord as an impressionable, vulnerable young man of 18 years of age and got caught up in what was known back in the 70s here as the Jesus movement. And you may have heard talk about Jesus freaks and things like that. Well, that was me. I wore a big cross around my neck. I wore the bell bottoms and I preached Jesus. I carried a big Bible and I did street ministry and coffee house ministry and really was sold out the whole route for God. And I did that through my 20s, through my 30s, through my 40s, and into my 50s. I got married to a Christian woman. We raised 3 Christian children. They got married to Christian spouses, and we all did the Christian thing for very many years. The kind of Christianity that we were locked into, the evangelical brand, is a very, it may be different in Germany and most of Europe. I think it is. But here in America, evangelicalism is really trying to take over the country. There's a big movement afoot since the last election that we elected a baboon to the office of president, and he's there now, and we can't get away. We can't get rid of him. I won't even say his name. But the evangelical base was largely behind that, and there's a movement afoot here in America to basically try to make America a Christian nation. Christian nationalism is the movement here. And those of us who don't adhere to that ideology are very much a minority and very much ostracized. My story is not all that uncommon in that when I deconverted from Christianity about 10 years ago, when I let go of my faith and realized and came to the conclusion that there was no God and that all the things that I'd believed in all those years was false. I was wrong about my thinking about Jesus and God, the way the world works, heaven and hell, all the things, sin, redemption, all those things that I had given my life to. I came to the conclusion at the age of 55 or so that I was mistaken and it was all a big lie that I'd believed. And so I was very traumatized by that. I was very disoriented. I didn't know who I was without God. I didn't know what to do next. I didn't know a single person on the planet that could identify with what I'd been through. And so I got on the internet and started looking through and found different groups and different people. The Clergy Project was one. That's an organization that helps clergy members like myself who no longer believe in God, helps us identify other people and connect with them and that sort of thing. So I got connected with some people and started finding that there were other people out there who'd been through what I'd been through. Another group that I learned of and I work with now is a group called Recovering from Religion. And I believe they actually have a group starting in Germany. I know there's several European countries they're in now. But they help people like me who came out of religion and need to reorient ourselves. And so the experience of coming out of that was, excuse me, my nose itched, very difficult in that much of my family, many of my friends disconnected from me when that happened. When they learned that I no longer embraced the identity as a Christian, my 2 older daughters disconnected from me. Many of my closest friends disconnected from me, and other family members became not totally disconnected, but very much less involved in my life. We just didn't have much in common anymore. And so that was a hard thing for me to get my head around and to deal with. And so I did for several years after losing my faith, or after discarding my faith. I was quite disoriented. I was still in a marriage that wasn't working because she remained a believer and I wasn't, and we didn't have anything that we connected on. And so that marriage ended a few years ago. And in the midst of all of that, I was just connecting with other ex-Christians, atheists, agnostics, humanists, and began to really build a new community. I was in Nashville, Tennessee at the time. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina with my girlfriend now, and have for the last year or so. But we have a really strong ex-Christian community there in Nashville. And I was living that life and enjoying my life. And then about a year ago, I got diagnosed with a terminal disease called ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. In parts of Europe, I think it's identified as a motor neuron disease, MND. And essentially that they gave me 3 to 5 years to live upon diagnosis. I'm 2 years into it now, 1 year from diagnosis, 2 years since I've started having symptoms. And what I will say is that I've learned that my particular disease is slower progressing than a lot of them are. It's a disease that causes degeneration of the muscles, and mine began in my fingers and hands and arms. And so I began to lose strength, and little tasks like opening packages and buttoning buttons and buttoning my pants and things like that became more and more difficult, and in some cases impossible. And so what this disease does is essentially the nerves quit telling the muscles what to do. So the muscles then just atrophy and I lose strength. And so eventually this disease will travel either to my mouth area and I'll lose the ability to speak and eat, or to my legs and I'll lose the ability to walk. With some ALS victims, it happens simultaneously in all parts of their body. Some just lose the ability to talk. They can do everything else. So it's very individualistic. There's no particular way that it happens with each of us. So we're all different in that. So when that happened about a year ago, I retired from the work I was doing as an insurance broker. And I made plans to travel and to just do the things I wanted to do, because if I only had a couple of years left to live, I decided I was going to carpe the fucking diem. That's a phrase I began to live by. And that simply means seize the fucking day. Do they allow you to say fucking in Germany? I think so. But anyway, it's my favorite word. And so I really was just planning to live as much life as I could and go for it, just grab all the moments in life I could grab. And then a few of my friends started talking to me about Dave, what do you want the rest of your life to look like? And a friend of mine who does assistant work, she said, Marie is my manager and assistant now. And Julia, you've been in touch with Marie, I think. But she said, let me help you. I want to get you on some podcasts and some YouTube shows, and let's start booking you into secular meetings and things like that. You used to be a pastor. You know how to talk in front of people. And so I did used to be a pastor. I left that part out. I was not just a Christian. I was a professional clergy. So I started doing podcasts and YouTube shows, and I started reaching people all around the world, all the way to Munich, Germany. And I started talking about a thing we named Dying Out Loud. And here's my Dying Out Loud shirt. You got to get some swag, guys. You got to get some merch. We got t-shirts. You can order them on our website. And then when I come to Munich, everyone can wear their Dying Out Loud shirt, and we'll have a party and drink beer. You guys drink beer there, I think, right? So I started talking about living, and we called it Dying Out Loud, but it really was more about living out loud. And what that means to me is when we realize that life is short and it's brief and there's only one life, And the difference between my view on that as an atheist, it couldn't be more different than my view was as a Christian. And that's what I started talking about. I used to believe that at the end of our life, we either go to heaven or we go to hell. And that's what most evangelical Christians believe. And if you have the right belief about Jesus, if you pray the sinner's prayer, they call it, if you are born again, then when you die, you go to heaven. If you don't believe Jesus is the Son of God and the Savior of the world, then when you die, you go to hell. And 80% of evangelical Christians believe in these two eternal destinies. And then this life then is viewed as just a warm-up or a preview for the real life, which is eternal life or death, eternal death, if you will. And when you let go of those ideas of heaven and hell, when you let go of the idea that there's an eternal life, there's an eternity somewhere, and you realize that this life is really all there is, then it makes this life more precious and more beautiful. And therefore, we can focus on, and we should focus on, maximizing the moments that we have in this life. What is my life looking like? Is my life the way I want it to be? Am I writing the story that I want to write? And when I rebooted my life after my divorce, even before I had ALS, I started living this way. And I said, I'm going to write the story my own way. I'm going to take the pen and I'm going to finish the story and I'm going to write it the way I want it to be. And what I say to people is, if your story is not being written like you want it to be, then change it. You're the author of your own story. And if it's not going the way you want, then my question is, why not? And whose responsibility is that? And so the Dying Out Loud message became more about grabbing the moments and living your best life and not letting life pass you by. And I started hearing from people literally all over the world who were telling me they were inspired by what I was saying as an atheist with a terminal disease, and that it really affected the way that they viewed their life. People with depression, with cancer, with PTSD from war trauma, really serious issues. I met a man at a talk I did in Cincinnati, and he came 4 hours. He said, I drove 4 hours to see you, Dave, because I've been listening to all your shows, everything that you're on that I can find. And he said, for my whole life, I've had a fear of death that has paralyzed me and has kept me from enjoying life. And you have somehow changed that for me. You've changed, he used the words, you've changed my life. And you've taken the fear of death away, and you've allowed me the freedom to enjoy the life I have. And that just moves me to tears when I hear that, because all I'm doing is talking about what I think is important in terms of how we live our life and how we view death. And that death is nothing to be afraid of. It's just the extension of life. It's the natural result of living. The reality is we start dying the day we're born. And when you look at it that way, it's nothing to fear. It's just, okay, that's there. That's like in a jar. Death is, you could say, we're going to put death in a jar and we're going to put it on the shelf. And we're not going to worry about it because it's nothing I can control, nothing I can do anything about. Even me, who I'm looking at another 2 to 4 years perhaps of life, unless they find the treatment. And I can't do anything about that. What I can do something about is the quality of life that I'm living now. What is that going to look like for me? I've got death in a jar on the shelf, and I'll deal with that when I get there. But right now, I've got a lot of living to do. I've got places to see. Well, not now since we can't travel, but before this, I had my calendar was full. We were going to be in Munich, obviously, and Amsterdam and England and France and all the places. And so now that got shut down, but we can Zoom there. But I've got places to be and things to do before I die, and I'll get to that when I get to it. But right now, my focus is on living and what I want that life to look like. So the death part of things is nothing to be afraid of, in the sense that when I do flip the switch and go to the other side, I won't be aware of anything. I won't wake up the next day and say, oh my God, I'm dead. Yeah, there won't be any awareness. So there's nothing to be afraid of in that sense. And so losing the fear of death allows us to live a better life. There's a quote from a poem someone sent me a year ago, and it's called, the poem is called My Soul Has a Hat. And the closing line is, there are two lives. We have two lives, and the second one begins when we realize we only have one. And when we realize that we have this one life, then it puts everything in perspective, and we can get on about living. And so that's essentially what our story, my message, is about. It's not a complex, profound message. It's just very simple. Live the best life you can. Carpe the fucking diem. Grab all the moments that are there. Don't let fear rule your life. If there is fear there, let's explore that and unpack it and see, why is it that you're afraid? Why is it that the idea of death has paralyzed you? I think one of the parts, and this is another thing I talk about a lot, is the fear of the unknown, the mystery element of it. And one way that I have taken that away from myself is that I have made particular plans. And I know in Europe it's a lot easier than it is here in America, but in America, they won't let you die according to the way you want to. There are only a few states that have death with dignity laws, and even those are very restrictive in terms of what kind of terminal window you have and that sort of thing. But I work with a group called the Final Exit Network, and there's a link to their website on my website, and I'm sure we'll put all my stuff out before, but it's daveoutloud.com, and all the links to my Facebook and Twitter and everything, and where you can get these awesome shirts. But the Final Exit Network is an organization it's a nonprofit of volunteers. And I'm going to wrap up because I see we're close to the time. But nonprofit volunteers, and what they do is they allow people like me with terminal illnesses with no cure, only going to get worse, only going to deteriorate until I'm basically a vegetable. They give me the ability to control how and when I end things. They help me with finances, with lawyers, with all the details. They help me with the equipment I need to end things on my own terms. And they give me back the control, so that when it gets to a point where my quality of life is not what I'm happy with, and this will be a decision that I'll make in conjunction with my partner and with my family, close friends, whatever. It's not just me, because I know my death affects other people more than it does me. I'm gone. They have to deal with it. But it allows me to control things. And that's what's important to me, is the sense that I'm in control. And when the quality of my life is past the point that I'm content with it, then I will say, okay, that's enough. Let's shut this thing down. And I am 100% in support of that. And I talk about this a lot because I think that a lot of people are more concerned about how this death will come about. Will I deteriorate? Will I be in a vegetable state? Will I be having to be taken care of for years and years and suffer needlessly? Or will I be able to have control and options? And so if you take that component away, yes, you will have options. Yes, you will have control. Then there's a lot less to fear when things are coming down to the end. So that's pretty much what Dying Out Loud is. We are going to get to traveling again when things loosen up. We had schedules all over the place, and we'll reschedule most everything. I really hope that we can reschedule Munich, because I really wanted to come see Munich and see all you people. So hopefully a year from now, we will see you in person, and that will be wonderful. I do believe, when I first got this diagnosis a year ago, I didn't know if like I said, I'd be in a wheelchair this time, dead at this time. I didn't know. But right now, the way it's going, it looks like I've got several more years that you guys are going to have to put up with me. So buckle up, Buttercup. Here we come. Carpe the fucking diem. I'll see you. Okay.